Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Wakefield High School, this year's host for the joint Arlington County Government Arlington Public Schools Budget Forum for fiscal year 2018. My name is Mark Schwartz. I'm the county manager. I'll be giving a brief presentation followed by Dr. Murphy, and then we will be breaking up into, I see you're already sitting at tables, which is good. And we'll have some questions for you, and we're hoping tonight will be interactive. This is being live streamed, and I think we're getting questions during the live streaming. So some of you have been to budget presentations previously. I just want to state right up front that this is the first of many opportunities you're going to have public input, and what will happen, and this we talked a little bit about on the last slide, but this all culminates in proposals that I'll make a proposal to the county board, and the superintendent will prepare his budget. He'll present that to the school board. And that will happen in February. So, you can see that this is an initial layout of what we're going to be doing this evening. We have from 6 to 6:30 the remarks, which leaves me, Dr. Murphy and I have 11 minutes then, so I'll talk quickly. And then we'll break up into small discussion groups, and we'll have report outs. I think we're going to break up into groups, report out on one question, then get back in our groups, and report on another question. This will all be transcribed and memorialized and be available for the public to view once we're finished. And you can see some of the questions we're going to be asking. We want to know essentially your thoughts about items in the budgets that we have right now that you think are important to continue. And then if you have any suggestions on how to improve those, and then also suggestions on programs perhaps that you think that we are currently doing that need to be reduced or go away, and any other areas you'd like us to focus on for future study. So what I wanted to talk about, and again very briefly, is that the county continues to grow, and you're going to hear a lot about this from Dr. Murphy about the increase in school-age population. But we have, as you can see, for our community, the county performs a large amount of important functions. So we have to keep a safe community. It turns out that we have an increasing and it's vibrant nightlife in our community, and that has an impact on our public safety staffing. If any of you have been to Clarendon, you know what I'm talking about. We have community infrastructure. The county board and school board adopted CIPs last year. We have a large number of facilities that need replenishing, updating, and we're building new facilities all the time. And we have some of the challenges we face not only with our community buildings, but with Metro. And so if you've been following the news, you know there is some particularly difficult fiscal times right now for Metro, and that's one of the challenges Arlington faces because we're part of the Washington Metropolitan Area Compact. And so that is a challenge we face with the infrastructure there. We contribute a portion to that. We have, where we live, work, and play, our parks and natural resources. We have a great set of parks and natural resources, certainly not enough to meet the demand in the community. We have a growing demand, and we have amenities on those parks and natural resources that we continue to update and we have to replace. We have libraries, which are great. We have a lot of them. We have a very high usage of it, and some of the impacts you see from not only the additional school kids coming to school and seats for those kids is when they get out of school, they like to use our libraries and our parks, and our population continues to grow. And then we have those people in the community that aren't doing as well as some of us, and so there's been an ongoing need for affordable housing, and that is one of the most acute challenges we have in the county. Try to find places for everyone who wants to live here, and there are a lot of people who want to live here who can't afford it, to try to make housing available for our workforce that we need in our community. And then also social safety net. I know this is sort of a surprising statistic, but almost 25% of the county population at one point or another has access to our social services. And so that is something that is an ongoing need. You don't see it every day, but it is there. So, again, talking about, I think actually I spoke to this all already, so I'm just going to skip this slide, talking about the impact of the school-age population and how it increases the demand. I did want to note one thing, which is that not only do we have additional school capacity or additional teachers that are needed, we have In the schools, there are additional nurses that are required. Those nurses are actually funded by the county, and I'll get into that in a little bit later on a slide that talks about services that the county provides to the schools. So let me talk a little bit about what's going on with the economy. So essentially, when we get into a budget, our major source of funds are the real estate taxes that residents and commercial property owners pay. There's a split, about 50% of the real estate taxes paid by our commercial property owners and 50% by our residential owners. And the trends right now are that our residential market, which has been doing very well over the last few years, is slightly positive, which means that there's been some increase in the assessed values. We won't know the final numbers until the end of December, the beginning of January, when assessment notices go out. We also have apartments. There seem to be an unending number of apartments being built in residential properties. We have, given that supply, the rents on apartments, the growth in them have actually slowed a little bit. And then for commercial office, one of the real challenges we face is, and it's depicted here on this slide, is our commercial office vacancy rate. When I became county manager in January, I laid out 3 priorities. It's the #1 priority we have as a county, and it was talked about during the community facility study analysis. We have over 20% vacancy rate for our commercial office buildings. That vacancy rate has been stubbornly sitting around 20%. We've had some very, I think, important and long-lasting efforts underway that have restrained that vacancy rate from becoming worse, and we're hoping to turn it around. But for every percentage on those vacancy rates, that's a $3 to $4 million loss in our real estate tax revenue. So that has real implications. And you can see, since 2011, the vacancy rate has essentially doubled. So that is has a big fiscal impact. Here you can see the trends since 2013 on assessments, the growth in assessments. You can see the purple color is the commercial, residential is the green, and then the blended total in the yellow. So for our current assumptions right now as we head into budget planning for fiscal year 18, which is the same assumptions we used for calendar year 2017, we're assuming approximately 2.1% growth in the overall real estate market. So we also collect other taxes, and those of you who are watching or are here may have the pleasure or displeasure of paying some of them. We have our business, professional, and occupational license taxes that are paid, and our personal property taxes. We have meals tax, transient occupancy taxes. They make up a lesser amount of our fiscal resources, and our estimates for that is that they will grow slightly, not very much. We have some additional fee revenue, and then I would say that the state and federal revenue, which is a small part of our budget, single-digit percentages, is uncertain. The state is suffering right now from a fiscal shortfall, and it's uncertain what's going to happen at the federal level. That may be the understatement of the night. So, if the tax rate as currently proposed, as currently adopted, were to stay exactly where it is, and those real estate trends were to continue, the average homeowner, and again, there is no such thing as an average homeowner, but it's a blended analysis, would be paying an additional $159 in local taxes and fees if we were to propose the budget right now based on what the tax rate is. So let's keep that in mind as we talk about what it is that we need by way of resources. This has an impact, and you can see there were a few years back in calendar year 14 where the increase in taxes and fees was more than double that. So, on the county side, when we put together our budget, we build what we call a continuing services budget, which is essentially saying, we have a budget, we're going to do the same things we did last year, how much does it cost to do them this year? Well, there are certain costs associated with what we do that go up every year. We have health care, we have retirement costs, contractual costs, debt service, those kinds of things, which increase each year. It turns out that this year, fortunately, our retirement costs are flat. Other post-employment benefits is flat. That's the cost of retiree health care. But we do face some pressure on our contractual costs, and our health care costs are estimated to go up at 7.5%, and we're hoping it's limited to that. The big pressure we have on the county side right now is the additional contribution that we know, at a minimum, we're going to have to make to Metro. So I will talk a little bit about that on I think it's on the next slide, or 2 slides from now. But when you add that all up, essentially our expenses against what our revenue assumptions are, we have about a $5 to $6 million gap. And we will be revising those estimates as we go ahead. It's a preliminary estimate. As we get closer to February, we will have another set of estimates. And right now, the revised estimates will probably increase that gap based on what's happening with Metro. And then there are some one-time funding issues, which I don't really need to get into this evening. But I did want to spend a minute talking about the Metro budget pressures, because that's different this year than the last few years, which is that right now, WMATA is assuming a funding gap of $290 million. Arlington County is a member of the compact. We have an obligation to meet, I think it's around 7 or 8% of that total. Whatever the gap is and the funding requirement, the ask is of local jurisdictions, we have a commitment to pay our share of that. And right now, based on what the general manager has put forward, where he's talking about potential for some fare increases and service reductions, the current estimate, the best case right now, is that we will have to pay at least $4 million more this year than we did last year. But this last bullet, we think the increase could be as much as $6 to $9 million. And again, we won't know the answer to that until Metro goes through its budget process. And that, again, is assuming fare increases and service reductions. And I have to tell you that that is a serious issue for the region. As you increase fares, reduce service, and service isn't as reliable, you end up in something which we hope doesn't approach a death spiral, because as you do that, fewer people ride, the revenue from passengers goes down, and it's a very difficult situation. So the one thing that I think every leader and my colleagues in the jurisdiction and the county board and the other boards know is that there's going to be additional contributions required from residents and citizens in the form of either additional contributions from taxpayers through the county budgets. There's been talk about a dedicated source of revenue. There's been talk about that for years, dedicated sales tax. None of that's actually in place. Right now, we're assuming an increase in our contribution of $4 million, probably going to be more like $6 to $9 million. So we have another important part that Dr. Murphy's going to talk about, is that of our budget, we have revenue sharing principles with the schools, and that whatever local tax revenue we get, the schools will get 46.6% of that. And that results in an increased transfer to them, another $10.2 million above what they received last year. And you will see in the schools, we'll talk a little bit about what their budget needs are. And with that, that supplements that $475 million we'll be giving. In addition to that, we have school resource officers we pay for, nurses, crossing guards, the assistance that we provide for our human service programs in schools, and also we share some costs with the schools on fields. So there's some additional contributions there above the $475 million. A little bit about the population trends I mentioned. Population continues to grow, which is driving a lot of our demands. If you have questions about that, we'd be happy to handle that at the tables. And there are also some assumptions that the school has built into their budget. But for right now, what we do as a government, and I have my senior management team here, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in a minute after I do this, which is we received budget guidance from the county board that said, Mr. Manager, when you're building your budget, this is how we want you to do it. We want you to, what they would prefer is that we balance the budget, cut taxes to zero, and increase services to infinity. But knowing that that won't happen, the alternative suggestion they made is that we continue to look at ways to reduce or eliminate programs, if necessary, to come in with a balanced budget at the current tax rate. And if we can't do that, alternatively, look at if there's a tax rate increase needed to meet the Metro needs or the additional needs you'll hear about Arlington Public Schools, explore that, describe that, and if possible, at the same time, explore options that might provide a tax rate reduction. So these are some of the obligations we have. Some specific tasks we were given were to focus more in depth on some of our programs like the Real Estate Tax Relief Program, which provides assistance to people who live in homes that it's essentially a program targeted to people above a certain age whose incomes are lower. but have pretty high real estate tax bills. We are undergoing a review and analysis of our compensation system, and we were tasked with reporting back on that. But we'll talk a little bit about in our tables about some of the strategies that we might pursue in doing that and how we deliver our services. These are some of the questions. But in sum, the challenges we face right now are with the current services budget, we have a $5 to $6 million gap, which includes additional demands for Metro. And then you're going to hear from Dr. Murphy. The schools continue to experience I shouldn't say explosive, but continued growth of almost 1,000 students a year, which is putting additional pressure on our budget. So with that, I'm just going to briefly stop. I want to make sure before I turn it over to Dr. Murphy, because we have a lot of members of our senior management team here who are here to help facilitate some of the conversations. I'm going to start at this table over here. If you'd all quickly just introduce yourselves. Steve? Okay, so everybody, I was just the warm-up act for Dr. Murphy, and he is in the room here, I assume somewhere. There he is, he's right there. So big round of applause for Dr. Pat Murphy.
Well, good evening and welcome, and thank you for coming out. I'm going to do my introductions following Mark's, and I'm going to start first with introducing one of our school board members, Mr. Reed Goldstein. Reed is here with us this evening. Thank you, Reed, for coming out. I've got members of my team in the back, and maybe we can start with Dr. Natras and just go around the table there with quick introductions. All right. Thank you guys for being here. Let me give you a kind of a few things that you'll hear me repeat with the presentation, but I'm going to begin to kind of plant some seeds. As Mark has already mentioned, enrollment continues to be an issue that we are facing as far as how we are continuing to grow. So you'll see a number of different charts and data points that speak to what our enrollment growth has been and then how it's projected out into the future. You will also see with that where we are in relationship to the direction that I have received initially from the school board. The school board is posed to adopt that direction tomorrow night. And we have actually built into previous budgets a 3 to 5 year plan as far as how we are going to incrementally grow the budget and provide additional services or also look at efficiencies. So that's going to play out as far as how I point to the specific gap that we have. Our gap is a little bit different than the county. It's anywhere between $22 and $28 million. A lot of that has to do with the fact where we are tonight in the process. And I'm reminded of one of Mark's predecessors said to me at one point in time when I was new, I was very concerned about where we were at the point in time, and they reinforced with me that the budget is a fluid process. And the one thing that I can guarantee you is that it will change. So your feedback, your input, your conversation about where we are tonight as of November 30th and where we end up at the end is very helpful in kind of guiding that process, but also as far as how we work through things, as far as what the state budget's going to look like, which is coming out on December 16th, what some of the decisions are going to be around healthcare and the retirement system, all kind of play into this picture as we move forward. So using that as a little bit of a backdrop, one of the things is, I think, the services that we provide here educationally for students, as well as coupled with the county, speak really well to what our performance looks like. You can see that we have all our schools, again, fully accredited for the second year in a row, and we are among a very elite group of the over 130 some odd school divisions in the Commonwealth to achieve that. You can also see with our comprehensive high schools, we have a 97% graduation rate. Again, I think we deliver the services so kids can be successful and then be able to move on to support our community in a variety of different ways. And then you see that we have a high percentage of our kids moving on to some type of post-secondary experience, whether that be a 2-year or a 4-year experience, with the balance of those kids either moving right into the workforce or going into the military. So the fact that we are an economic engine and a part of what happens here in the county, I think we've been very, very successful at doing that. We point to some of the enrollment growth that we've seen over the past several years. You can see that this year we were projected to grow by over 1,100 students. We didn't achieve that mark. We were shy of it, and that actually is a good thing. You can see that we've grown by over 6,500 students in the past 8 years, and we're projected to grow by another 4,000 plus students in the next 5 years. You can get some idea from the solid line with the points what that growth has looked like over the last several years. By the way, our average elementary school size is within this range of about 700 plus. So we're growing at the rate of an elementary school or more each year. You can see that we spiked in 2014, 2015, but then you can see what the average line is, that sort of dotted line progressively averaging out. I say we were growing about 800 students on average, and we're projected to look like that as we go out into the future. This just gives you a sense also of how we will achieve or eclipse 30,000 students by the year 2022. The other way that we look at this is, since I've been here, we've been exiting classes, cohort classes, 12th grade classes of about 12 to 1,400 students. We, though, have been accepting classes of kindergarten around 2,200 students. So you've got these smaller cohorts that are exiting, and you've got these larger cohorts that are coming into the school division. Right now, those cohorts of 2,200 sit from K to 5, and then you have them sort of trail off. I think this year's cohort is somewhere around 1,400 students for our 12th graders. So that's just another visual to give you a sense. Fact of the matter is there's also been questions about enrollment. Are your projections accurate? The fact of the matter is the students are here, they're already in our school division, and they're progressively moving through the grade levels. Some of the things that we see coming down the pike as we really look at preparing students for careers and the workforce. There are new graduation requirements coming out from the state as far as related to the profile of the Virginia graduate, also what diplomas look like. There's a strong de-emphasis around testing and also applied skills. So Dr. Natras has been speaking extensively about this. This also relates very closely to one of our new programs that we're beginning to grow at Arlington Tech that is around project-based learning. You may say, okay, what's project-based learning? It's actually what we do in our jobs. It's real life. It's about contracting. It's about preparing presentations. It's about having kids analyze information and being able to present it. It's what we do each day in our jobs with the different assignments and different responsibilities that we have. It's preparing a workforce for the future, and I think that relates very closely to what Mark said about the vacancy rate here. Do we want our students to grow into the community, and how do they contribute to the economic engine here, and also attracting businesses? The other piece that we have is, I mentioned, one of the phased-in plans over the next 3 years is to have psychologists and social workers. We see that as a very big part of the whole child, and the emphasis not only around academia, but also preparing students for their future. And then finally, the idea around personalized learning and our technology infrastructure that is also very close and linked to some of the things that are going on with the county, most notably Connect Arlington. I always say that our staff are the life's blood of our success. What happens in classrooms each and every day makes the difference in each child's life. We are very fortunate that we attract many of our staff here that have advanced degrees. Over 82% of them have advanced degrees. We also get a high percentage of folks that come into this system that have 10 or more years of experience. That's reflected, I think, in the success that we see in our students. We also recognize that we are in a very competitive market. We're competing with many of the surrounding school districts, so our compensation, our benefit package needs to continue to be competitive, and then also we need to make sure that we provide a career path, and that's what Dr. Christy Murphy does as far as growing people when they come into the system, and they may enter in various roles, but how do they see investing in Arlington Public Schools and see the trajectory of their career over a 30-year period. A quick snapshot of kind of where we sit right now. Last year, the budget was $582 million. Right now, with the revenue, we're looking at, as Mark noted, and this will change, we're looking at an increased county transfer of $10 million. I do want to make note, though, based on our projections, which will be updated a little bit later in December, we are projecting an enrollment growth with a need of $11.9 million. That will also continue to adjust. You know that we have an aggressive capital program going on. So we've got debt service. Many of the initiatives that we had placed into the budget last year, you can see that those are slated in at just over $6 million. We also recognize we need to have a compensation package as part of this year's budget, and then some unknowns as far as how we look at what the Virginia retirement system's rate is going to be. There's much discussion about that, what the governor's budget's going to be, and then what health care looks like. So a lot of these things continue to be in flux. We see that our total budget package, which I will be coming forward with in the latter part of February, sits at anywhere between $611 to $617 million. And so the gap there, as it currently exists, is anywhere between $22 and $28 million. So a variety of different venues for community engagement, from sounding board meetings with staff to meeting with key stakeholders. Tonight is the kickoff of the forums. We will have, in collaboration with the county, some type of online budget feedback tool, similar to some of the questions that we'll be asking you. Again, just reflecting on some information that I have already kind of shared with you as far as the quality that we bring here to our community. Board is slated to adopt budget direction tomorrow evening. We've got several key stakeholder meetings slated. We do have a Spanish community budget forum prior to the winter break, and then my budget proposal is slated for February 23rd. I do want to let you know that Mr. Schwartz and I are in competition for presentations, and so I have been able to craft video presentations into all of my PowerPoints. So what follows is going to be a video presentation that he is extremely envious of. And this is a presentation of our students at the Career Center where they talk about this workforce development issue and how at the Career Center as one place we are preparing students. This presentation also was selected by the Virginia School Board Association, and our students won first place with it, so we're really proud of it. I've also offered to Mark that if he'd like to hire our students for some of the county presentations, they are available. So hopefully we can get this to run.
I am workforce ready. My future is bright.
I am prepared to be a leader.
The skills I have learned in my culinary class give me confidence for my future.
My dual-enrolled auto tech class gives me an advantage because I am getting college credit in high school.
In my EMT class, I'm training to save lives and pass my basic life support course.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
We
We
are
are
workforce
workforce ready.
So thank you. I guess I'll turn it back over to either Mr. Schwartz or staff members. I know we're going to go into the breakout groups.
So, I'm Bryna. At your tables are discussion guides, and what we'd really like to do, and we're going to have some staff with you, to really roll up your sleeves on the first question, which I think we have a first question. Do you need that for that? Otherwise, I don't think I need this. So the first set of questions really talks to the priorities that should be considered. This is the beginning of the budget process, as both Dr. Murphy and Mark Schwartz have indicated. So are there budget items that you'd like to see continued in this year's budget? Are there things funded in the past that should be changed? Are there new areas for consideration? So we're just going to take about 10 or 15 minutes to have a conversation at your table and then share those out. And do we have a staff person that can just come on up to each of these tables to help capture? And we're going to capture everything, so we'd love for you to have a short conversation. And online, if you'll use your chat box, that would be great. Thanks. I know. Oh, man. Okay. I'll hold it down here. So, okay. So let's just hear a couple things. Let's just start with one idea that popped. So what's one idea that popped at this table? Anyone? Here you go. Just share something that you...
Invest in people, not in technology, in teachers especially.
Say more about that.
Make sure that the technology we're investing in has a proven track record of actually improving outcomes for students, not just the next big thing.
Okay. Anyone, did you guys talk about technology at all? Why don't you guys share what you...
I suggested that that might be a place to cut, and I think others at the table thought that maybe what we should be doing is making sure that the investments we're making are working well in all of the schools, not just in some of the schools for the digital learning initiative.
Okay. Anything else on technology from anyone? Okay, another theme that came up at your table?
I raised asking for money to be spent on some outdoor learning and landscaping type of initiatives at all of the elementary schools. A lot of the PTAs raise money and provide this, and some schools have no PTA ability to do that. It seems inequitable, and it's not a whole lot of money, but it's a whole lot of learning for the amount of money. So on behalf of schools like Jamestown, Arlington Science Focus, Randolph, Patrick Henry, Drew Model, and Barrett that I all heard from today, in addition to Tuckahoe PTA, where we do provide this, I would like the school board and the county board to get together and put a little bit of money towards having this at all of the elementary schools.
Okay, anyone else talk about outdoor space at schools? Did you guys talk about that? What's another theme you guys talked about?
I'm a reporter. So.
Oh, sorry. Anyone? We'll make you the spokesperson for that table.
Great.
How's that?
That's what I wanted. So there's a plan or a question about turning empty office space into school space. It has been used in other counties, including Fairfax and Alexandria. And we have a lot of empty office space, so it seems like something that would be well suited to the county.
So repurposing, any conversation about repurposing over here? Okay. What's another theme from your table?
Another theme is out-of-school time and the whole child report and assessing the needs for a full-time staff person to coordinate, organize all the out-of-school time activities for our youth from cradle to college.
Okay. Anyone else want to say anything else about that at the table or over here? Cradle to grave. College. Cradle to college. You don't have to educate me that one. Sorry. That's all right. Okay, Matt, what you got?
So there's talk about making sure that we have adequate reserves to deal with future metro instabilities that we are probably, looking at. Even if we can't count on them having more shortfall, we can definitely count on them being unpredictable.
Okay. Anything about metro over here? Community transportation? Okay. What's another theme that you guys had over here? Reed, you have the microphone.
We lightly discussed cybersecurity essentially in Arlington, and the gentleman here just also explained the three main methods of obtaining funding. And I introduced just essentially looking at working with the Department of Defense to get some buy-in for Arlington, particularly in this district, because I think that having that DoD buy-in keeps us relevant, keeps our children plugged into cybersecurity and the technology that's on the frontier. And maybe we can get the DoD to do some grants and some programs, just something to think about, leveraging our contacts in our backyard. So we talked about that.
Great. Somebody else at this table?
There's also talk about getting rid of trailers for better options, that we can get a similar sort of flexibility using prefab modular buildings, which have a better, they're better school environment, they're better to be in, but you can still move them around, and they're still temporary structures.
So your earlier one was on reconfiguring kind of
So it was permanent space versus temporary space, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, any other things that you guys popped at your tables?
Hi. Languages. We spend a tremendous amount of money on Spanish language. We have 4 Spanish programs in the schools now, and that's my specialty. German's my language, and so we have Germans, Japanese, Chinese, and there's another one. But we've been doing Arabic, online language learning, which is not working for the students. Parents are complaining. So my thought is to decrease some of the money that we're spending in the Spanish language programs and put that into some of these other language programs, which are more relevant, I think, nowadays anyway, the Arabic, Chinese.
Great, thank you. Anything else over here?
Just one more thing. Continued good communications and working relationships between both the county and the school budget board for both sides on the budget, because I think it makes everyone a lot calmer when anything else hits, and it's just better for everyone around.
Great, thanks. So we're going to ask you to turn the paper over and spend another 15 minutes on this second set of questions, and we'll come back and do the same closeout, and then Dr. Murphy and Mr. Schwartz will make some closing remarks.
All right, so we'll get to the difficult decisions. What type?
right, who's going to take the mic at this table? Well, Anita, we don't want Anita to use it. Okay. And who's going to take the mic at this table? Would you be willing? No? Would you be willing? Oh, you're. Sure. Well, okay, Matt. All right, let's hear just some. What should the county and schools consider when weighing services and/or program reductions, revenues, or impact on taxpayers? So let's just hear a couple of those. Matt?
So we were talking a lot about ways that the school can utilize space or time differently. So we could do things like potentially go to a 4-day school week for some students, for older students, or use unused county space like community centers or libraries that are mostly vacant during the day because people are at work. Can we use those for school activities during the day and maybe ease some of this space issue?
Anything on space over here? Okay, why don't you share a little bit of what you guys had?
We did have that office space. Yeah, we just talked about possibly using office space for schools. I think there was people who felt it was good and people who felt there were some issues with it.
Okay, what's another theme that came up on this question for you?
Metrics, using metrics to evaluate the investments that the school board has already made in things like FLES and the Digital Learning Initiative to make sure that our investments that we're making are actually resulting in better student outcomes.
Okay, tied to your earlier priorities.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Matt?
So we had some transportation ideas. We can get rid of some of the technology in bus stops. Those real-time screens seem unnecessary when everybody has a computer in their pocket. And we can just make that more accessible. We also thought about reducing the expansion of the bike share program because it becomes less efficient the less populated and the further away you get from metro areas.
Okay, and other thoughts over here about efficiencies or reductions or?
We thought as a potential revenue source, people should consider doing more traffic enforcement around schools, particularly because there are some safety issues people are concerned with, and at the same time, it could be a revenue generator for the county.
Also, the adult living. Seniors. 3 years ago, a senior was hit by a car and killed, so there needs to be more protection.
So on the enforcement side, okay. Anything else over here? That was it? Anything else over here?
Oh, yeah. I think that was just in the metrics. I suggested things like Peach Jar. If it's working well, great, but there are some concerns about how well information is flowing out through Peach Jar, and it's another thing that we're paying for. So if it's actually working, great, but we should be doing some evaluation and metrics on things like that where we make an investment.
Okay, so lots on technology and space. Yes.
Just to, don't stop the pen and the paper communication. Because now, everybody's told to go. Oh, you can go on the computer. You can get the information from here. Well, I don't do computer very well, for one. And I like having the pen and the black and the white in front of me. So that's one thing we need to spend more money on. Go back to, distributing information, through the mail.
Super, thank you. So Mark, I'm going to turn to you and Dr. Murphy.
So I just want to make sure that we have had scribes, and so Joe and Nicole, thank you very much for being scribes tonight. And that information is going to be transcribed, right? And we'll be putting it up on our website. We had, I think, the last slide that Dr. Murphy had, and I think I rushed through the slide on our side, which is further engagement opportunities. We have a web page up. Did we get any questions through Twitter tonight? Not yet. I told my mother to write in around 7:30, but she doesn't know what I'm talking about. And with that, I'm going to see if Dr. Murphy has anything he wants to say, but I wanted to thank everybody for taking time out of their evening to come and encourage you to stay engaged.
Thank you, Mark. I've got just a couple things I want to pass along to you, and Leslie Peterson, would you kind of wave your hand there in the back as you head out? there's a couple things that I'd really encourage you to pick up. The first is we do have a budget development community engagement calendar, and if you look on the back, it's got all the details. So my encouragement is to stay involved and plugged into the process. And so this will kind of give you all of the dates and times and meeting places. We've also developed with our finance team a citizen's guide to understanding the budget. It's got a bunch of information in here that really talks about a variety of things related to our strategic plan, the budget process calendar, how money is distributed between the county and the schools, what our expenditures look like. It's very detailed, and I think it gives you a good kind of citizen snapshot as far as what is happening and how we're progressing. So those are also on the back table. And then the last piece that is somewhat connected to tonight's discussion, the school board, in concert with staff, has developed a 3 to 5 year action plan. And it really speaks to what are some of the projects and objectives we have connected with our strategic plan as we move forward in the next 3 to 5 years. Part of this is to communicate to the community that we have a plan. Plans, by the way, do adjust, and they are modified. But it sort of forecasts the work that is ahead of us. And so if you open, I'll reference you to the back, which is kind of an operational definition with symbols. But then if you open up the detail in the center, this really outlines for you on the left-hand side of the page our strategic plan, and then all of the different initiatives and projects that we have coming down the pike instructionally, from also our recruitment to our capital plans. And so I think it gives you a nice snapshot picture as far as how we're going to continue to move forward. By the way, this was produced back in September, and it will continue to be updated probably every 6 to 8 months as far as what this looks like, as far as how we move forward. All of this is in concert with us realizing by 2022 that we're going to be over 30,000 students. We need to have a plan in place. We need to be prepared. We also need to make sure that we're explaining very clearly to the community how we're moving forward and what that looks like. So all 3 of those documents are in the back there with Leslie. Encourage you to pick those up. Thank you for coming out, and also thank you to the county staff and our communication staff for being here this evening as well.